Welcome to Smooth Brain Radio, the talk show where we iron out the wrinkles of your brain, one topic at a time.
Hey, welcome ladies and gentlemen. How you guys doing today? Hopefully you all having a fantastic afternoon because we're about ready to twist this and warp it into something kind of out of my brain.
Hello?
Because that's the voice in my head, just so y'all know. That's not real. But today's topic is going to be the simulation theory. And
Oh my God.
more or less my version of it, I want to say, and how, you guys have heard me talk about my delusion before, or at least it's been brought up in the last two episodes. So today's going to be a little bit of an explanation of that, and Lothan said he's going to try to throw me through a loop. So, or he's got some other people's insight. Now, because of the way this all works, it's really kind of like insight from me that just gets regurgitated in the system somehow. I ain't quite figured it out yet, but on that note, I've got Lothans with me. Hey, Lothans, how you doing today?
Hey, boss. How we doing?
Oh, boss. Yep.
I don't know. I don't know.
Pretty good.
I'm trying to figure it out.
A little sore.
Yeah, a little slow. Well, we're about to ramp it up. I think we're gonna have a little bit of fun with this topic. I know we will because you're definitely on board with the simulation, and
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
I think just to make sure we're all on the same page with what I want to talk about and what I want to bring to the table here, it's more like my interpretation of things that people have already gone through, right? Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. We'll get to them when we get to them. But yeah, it's going to be based off of people that they have way more wrinkles than I do, okay, in their brain, in their bonobo brain. So I'm just going to kind of hang on to their coattails and try to make sense of it all.
Well, the reason I started off with the way I did is because if the whole it all begins with that word, if, pure and simple, right? So history is on a loop, if you ask me. The things that are taught to us seem constantly repeated, right? There's even a phrase that says, if you don't learn from the, lessons of history, you're doomed to repeat them and so that tells me that it's cyclic, so to speak, or versionary, if you will. And it really set in for me personally, obviously, when the movie The Matrix came out. So on that note, I made a little bit of a snafu, so to speak, to help you all kind of catch up to my wake-up moment, if you will.
Snafu.
So on that note, yeah, let's let this play through real quick and see you on the flip.
Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Follow me. Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world? This can't be. Be what? Be real? Welcome to the real world.
All right, so that line that he says right here is "Welcome to the real world," right? However, right? However, Neo, through his little journey right there, is completely oblivious. He wakes up every day and he goes about his routine. So what I think a lot of people miss in that sequence in that movie is the world, literally, when he opens his eyes, is made for him by a machine in this case, but the machine is gearing the entire sequence of code for him. And it's all subconsciously, right? Because he's in a box. He doesn't know that, he's got no clue of the physical realities around him. He's just told, he's grown up and said that, hey, this is how things work around here. So his brain falls in line, so to speak. But
that scene,
when he's told to
I'm sorry, I thought you were at the end of your thought.
No, go right. I am.
So that scene in particular in The Matrix reminded me of a song, one of my favorite songs of all time, "Man in the Box" by Alice in Chains. Okay, I don't know if you're familiar with that. You probably are.
Yep.
But if anybody isn't, go check it out. But basically, the opening line is, "I'm the man in the box, buried in my shit," and it goes on to say, "Free my eyes," and then you have a background vocalist saying, "Can you sew them shut again?" So his eyes are suddenly opened to reality, the reality of his situation, and then he immediately wants them sewn shut again. So he doesn't want to see it. He doesn't want to be in that.
Right.
He wants to go back in the box where he feels safe. Right. This is normal to me, even though it's not real.
Right.
He would prefer that over the staggering realization of what reality of his real situation is. And that's what that kind of reminded me of, because Neil was like, and he gave him the choice, right? Red pill, blue pill. You can forget this ever happened and go back to what's comfortable, what's safe, what's normal, or we can go on this little adventure and you find out what is really going on, and you leave your comfort zone and everything changes. Yeah. So,
but curiosity, just like a cat kills a human just as quick as well, right? Yeah. So, but also think of the power of the mind itself. For you to bring up the song "Man in the Box," right? He wanted to, like, literally, unsee what he's seen, similar to Cypher inside the movie. Cypher wanted to go back to the Matrix because he thought it was more real, right? So, and that's because of obviously emotional states and all that jazz, but the mind itself creates all of those emotions, viewpoints, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I'm going to kind of use a line that is thrown part of one of Grimm's topics, but it kind of rings true to the simulation. Are we a brain driving a body, or are we a body driving a brain, right? So but consciousness itself in and of itself is what? Is it from the mind? Is it from the environment? Is it from the emotional state? Is it a combination of all these things? So again, the loop of history comes back to things repeating themselves, like a versionary system of upgrades to a game, for example, right? New weapons get added in. Okay, bammo, the nuclear weapon's invented. All right, and then all of a sudden, supercomputers are invented. Boom, things come in rounds, and versionary is what I'm saying here. And when a population, because right now we're in this part of the simulation, providing if the world is simulated, right? The current scenario globally is that AI is on the rise, that we need to put it in check before it becomes too powerful for us, right? And this is what we get to play with. We've mentioned this before in the other episodes. We have home AI now. Imagine what the secrets that keep actually have. And most reports say that the governments and all that jazz are at least 200 years ahead of us on a commercial level. So if it's a simulation, then the simulation already knows what it's going to do to get to where it needs to be, because the simulation itself is an A to B scenario. and then everything in between is just a portion of the calculation to get to B, right?
Well,
Unless
if it's an advanced enough simulation, I mean, it kind of depends on the computing power, and this goes to sort of one of my points I wanted to bring up later on. But if you have infinite computing power to run the simulation, nobody's ever going to know it's a simulation because there's no failure, right?
Right.
You can look as far as you want to look, and you're going to see the simulation. There's no glitch in the matrix, so to speak, to kind of bring that in. But if there's limited computing power, then you're going to have glitches. You're going to have things like deja vu all the time, which we've all experienced some form of deja vu. And that's like one of those, from the movie The Matrix, they brought that in and said, this is a glitch in the Matrix. This when something's been changed on the fly, and you're getting stopped somewhere.
Repeat.
But, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the machine trying to quarantine. In that specific scenario, obviously, there's a row program, right? In the simulations that would probably really be created, I mean, unless it's, enslavement, the program is running a calculation to get to a determinative output. And unless it's a procedurally generated simulation, then almost all variables are calculated. i.e. air, earth, gravity, etc. There's rules for everything, and everything, has its guiding factors. Similar to the Matrix Part 2, where she says, at one point in time there was programs running around here controlling the birds, right? So that's what I mean by it's a predictive A to B model. It's trying to be determinative, not predictive, sorry. Predictive, sorry. The simulations that we're in that I believe that we are in, I should say, are trying to figure out where the hell we screwed up so that the perceived time travelers that, I don't know, if you scour the web or anything, if time travel in itself is part of the equation is what I'm trying to say here. You go back in, you rinse, repeat, run the program again, screws up, go back, rinse, repeat, run the program again, etc., until you get all of the possible outcomes of why something went wrong. And then you can, if you have the ability to go back, which obviously you do if you're a program, because all you got to do is reset the factory defaults, etc., and then rerun the program, and it starts doing its stuff, right? So are we living in the world repeatedly, essentially, is what I'm trying to say here. And if we do, are the deja vu moments that we're, coming across, are they the specific version ghost in the machine, if you will, or is it a bleed through because there's multiple simulations running all at the same exact time? Because, if you have the computing power, like you're saying, then, you're going to have to, you're not going to have to, but the things that go through the system are going to have to be amplified, right? If you will. You're going to need double the horsepower, CPU power, et cetera, unless you have all of eternity in and of itself captured in a bottle. And then who knows how much power that is, right? And then we're talking about multiverses and all that jazz.
Or unless you program into the simulation a limiter, such as, I don't know, the speed of light, perhaps, that is going to limit.
Being its specific.
It's going to limit the exploration potential of the species being simulated inside this simulated universe, so that you don't need infinite computing power anymore, because as they explore out, there's only so far that they can look. It's so fast, right? In any certain direction. So you simply generate that, sort of like when you're playing a video game with procedural generation, right? You go to the next map over, and there's no loading screen. It just takes a second to load in the textures, Right. So as long as your processing
power
comes
through and. Yeah.
So,
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, no, I mean, as you're approaching that space where it hasn't been generated, perhaps, as you're traveling at the speed of light, looking out,
Yeah.
The simulation can detect, hey, this is how far they're looking, and they're getting close to the edge where we haven't procedurally generated the next bit. So let's start generating it now before they get there, right? And then they'll never know.
Right.
So,
Right. And
I don't
know. And in that case, that's, for me, that's like adding new servers into the equation and spinning them up. So it's possible, because we can do it in the simulation itself, for the simulators to have already achieved this and then some. So, but that's kind of going to be going into the next layer here. So,
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Brain Radio will be right back after these messages from our sponsors. And you'd hear something right now if we had any. Welcome back to Smooth Brain Radio, ironing out your brain one wrinkle at a time.
Okay, and we're back. So,
Welcome
to finish off what I was saying
there.
So what I was saying there is as you're adding computers to it, right? And if the creators of the simulation are emulating what they themselves had achieved at a point in history, right? Because time, who knows how old time technically truly is. We know as far back as we can perceive 13.8 billion years, right?
Right.
So what's to say if we could just leap to that 13.8 billion years mark, because we're looking through a lens, right, saying that that's the end. Well, what happens when we get there, and then there's another 13.8 that we can look at even further, and then rinse and repeat indefinitely, right? So we have no clue. All we know is right now in the great, or at least what we're told inside the current simulation is, we can see so far we're the only ones in this crazy vastness of whatever the hell is out there, right? I mean, we're on this rock. Do we really know what's out there? What they tell us is out there is stars and moons and bigger things and such, right? So with all that out there, that's a lot of energy in and of itself. Obviously, we can't be the only ones if you look up and see that.
Well, the way I look at
realistically,
if you look at it from a perspective outside, looking down, okay, you're looking at the Earth, for example. Okay, you zoom out a little bit more, you're looking at the whole solar system. You zoom out a little bit more, you're looking at the whole galaxy, the Milky Way. Zoom out a little bit more, you see a cluster of galaxies, right? A galactic cluster.
The local
right.
Well, that's the local
galactic
group,
cluster.
but I know where you're going.
Zoom out a little bit more, you see several galactic clusters clustered together in a supercluster. You zoom out a little bit more, you see a whole universe, and you're outside the universe looking in. You zoom out a little bit more, you see multiple, like you see a universal cluster, if you will, right? You see clusters of universes, and you zoom out a little bit more, you see, a super cluster of universes in little patches here and there. So, I mean, it's how does the zoom out ever end, right? And if it doesn't,
no.
If it doesn't, then time never ends, right?
Correct.
Go back as far as you want, it's always going to be there, because without time, you have no movement, you have no generation of anything. Nothing happens.
Perception.
Yeah, nothing.
Perception of change is what time is.
Yeah, change. There you go.
So,
and that's the one. That's the only constant in the universe that we know of, is that everything changes. Okay.
Yeah, at some point in time, 100%. And then that's that line in and of itself. At some point in time.
We're beings that are trapped. We're driven by time. If time didn't exist, I don't think we could exist, because we travel through time, and our lives are basically a collection of moments in time that just continue. If time ever stopped, we couldn't generate a new experience. It would just stop doing anything.
Well, what if we are just energy in and of itself, right? We're told that we have a soul as a human, right? And when it's been measured that when you die, there's unexplained weight loss. And it's not by much, but it's an unexplained weight loss outside of the normal bodily functions that happen when you pass away, okay? What if, consciousness, we haven't figured out what consciousness is, and down to absolute science. We're told that we're a spirit, or, again, are we the brain driving the body or the body driving the brain? If we're the brain, where the hell do all the ideas come from? I mean, biological matter doesn't really seem to... yeah, right? I mean, how does biological matter come up with, ways to connect things? Obviously, these are all, super philosophical and
I was looking for that.
And all that jazz in nature.
I was looking for that transition. I've got one for you. I want to hear your interpretation of this. Okay. We're talking about the simulation theory, obviously. When I think about being trapped in a reality that's not real, and there's more to it that you don't have access to, I think about The Republic by Plato. Okay, the ancient-ass book on philosophy where Plato's subject matter is Socrates, okay? Most people have heard of Socrates, so I'm not going to explain it. Right. But in The Republic, there's what's called the allegory of the cave, where Socrates is talking with Glaucon. They're like best buddies. They talk all the time. And Socrates is describing to him, and he doesn't give any context. He just starts telling him about this place he calls the cave, where people are chained facing a wall in front of them to where their heads can't move side to side. They have to look right at that wall from birth. Okay, that's all they've ever known is that wall. They're stuck there. They can't move. They can't move around. They can't move their head to look around. Behind them is a light source that is casting shadows, and it's kind of like people are walking behind them, holding objects in front of the light source to cast a shadow on the wall that they're looking at. So they're experiencing these objects through the shadow of the object only. And the people make games out of it. Who can guess what the object is the fastest? Who's more accurate over time? Who's, things like this. And, the most accurate person who's the fastest at guessing what the object is and what's going to come next and what's going to come after that is revered by the people. They're the smartest among them, right? They're the best. So at some point in time, one man is he finds himself unchained all of a sudden, and he starts looking around and he sees an exit. So he crawls his way out of the cave and into the outside world. For the first time, he's blinded by the sunlight, right? It's painful. Right. He's his eyes have never seen sunlight before. It's agonizing, but over time, his eyes start to adjust, and he starts to see reality for the first time. He sees actual sunlight reflecting on, he sees the moon in a reflection of a pond, and he's like, oh my God, this is crazy. And he sees all these things for the first time. He sees flowers, he sees this, he sees that. So he says, wow, this is so freaking amazing. I've got to go down and tell the others. I've got to show them this and get them out here. So he goes back into the cave, even though he wants to stay out in the real world now. He wants to be there because he loves it. He's going to go back into the cave where he hates it, and he doesn't want to go because he loves his fellow people and he wants them to experience this. Okay? So when he goes back into the cave, he's again blinded by the lack of light, right? He can't see for a time. And he's trying
dark now.
Yeah, he's trying to explain to everybody what he saw and all this and that, all the wonders of the world above. And the others conclude that whatever happened to this guy drove him insane and caused him physical harm to his eyes where he can't see. So they would rather kill somebody than leave the cave at this point, right?
Right.
So-
To accept they'd rather kill the foreigner than accept a new reality.
Yeah, they'd rather kill somebody that's trying to bring them out there than actually go.
Yeah.
So I have my
Foreign
own
idea is what I meant to
interpretation of what he's trying to convey here. And I know that's just a summary and it's not very, very fleshed out. But what is your interpretation of that story?
Well, I mean, obviously, you are the environment in which you are raised, essentially, right? If you only ever see darkness, and I'm not referencing just pure pitch black here, I'm talking about negativity and just the things that you yourself would deem dark or negative, is what I'm saying here. Then you yourself are going to act and respond to everything in the same manner, because that's all you knew, right? So for the people stuck in the cave, fear comes to the first mind whenever, anybody that lashes out and hurts another is a large amount of time out of fear. So
Yeah.
but the overall analogy of that is we'll use the man in the box scenario here, right? It literally, those two coincide with each other, just like, Neo opening his eyes and asking why they hurt, because it's the first time he ever used them scenario.
Absolutely.
It's accepting the new things that are around you, and I mean, really, that's the best way to say it, is just accept the new things around you and either go with the flow or turn around and try to rescue the ones that, again, that you care for and such. That's why he goes back into the cave. I mean, I know there's more to that story as well. I've heard the same exact thing, read multiple things as well on it, but never the real source, I don't think. So I'm just going off of hearsay myself.
Sure.
But that to me is a man trapped in a box. So, but the reality is spun for them, and I remember from the story that they are the prisoners there. They're, like you said, they're the lesser of people, if you will. No, that's not. I'm wrong there. I take that back on that. Excuse that. Scratch that, if you will. We'll leave it in. But
well, my interpretation is that the people in the cave are everybody, humanity, and he's.
Okay.
Is every single person alive is in that cave, chained, staring at the wall, looking at shadows. He seems to suggest to me that the world we live in is nothing more than a shadow of reality. And he's using this guy who escapes and leaves the cave as the philosopher, because Socrates is a philosopher. He's always trying to convey to people how important and how noble philosophical thinking is. So this philosopher attempts to make the journey into the true reality and bring that information back to the rest of the world. But when he does so, he's laughed off as insane, or he's shunned, or people think he's crazy, and they just kind of say, this is some crazy old man. So I think it's sort of like a comparison of his own life. He's the man who crawled his ass out of the cave, discovered all this amazing wonder, tried to bring it back to everybody, and they just laugh at him like he's some crazy old bastard, which is the case if you read a lot of Plato, which I've got every book that he's ever written. That is the case most of the time. As you probably know, Socrates was put to death for spreading philosophy to the younger generation, which questioned the authority in place at the time in Greece. So,
I thought, wasn't it on a religious aspect as well? That was the reasoning for the killing of him.
That wasn't necessarily
philosophy.
That wasn't necessarily the reasoning for the trial.
Well, but that was the justification that they used.
Yeah, during the trial, it came out that he didn't believe in the gods in the same way that they did. Right, and that was literally the way he put it. He put it as political as he could, and say that I don't believe in the gods in the same way that you believe in the gods. And that's how he put it. So they use that as like you say, justification for what they were doing. But that wasn't the original charges brought against him. The charges were he was distributing dangerous thoughts and like spreading dangerous ideas to the younger generation.
Gotcha. So in the simulation that we currently live in, those lessons are designed to help us in the simulation accept the simulation, right? Any kind of prophecy or any of the Nostradamus type scenarios are, for me, a way that I think the machine is trying to say, prepare yourself. This could potentially happen. But we're going to have to catch it on the other side of this break.
Smooth Brain Radio will be right back after these messages from our sponsors. And you'd hear something right now if we had any. Welcome back to Smooth Brain Radio, ironing out your brain one wrinkle at a time.
All right, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you're tuning in, we're talking and discussing simulation theory. Obviously, when you're talking about a simulation, everything about the simulation is a part of the discussion. Why? Because if we are in a simulation, then you have to question the very nature of opening your eyes, right? That's why in the previous 2 episodes, I've kind of made jokes of, and it's an inside joke too with, everybody over the Buffer crew, that, the world for me, when I open my eyes, is made for me subconsciously, right? The second I open my eyes, everything for me is coming at me subconsciously, right? There's so many, I'm going to bring in the deja vu aspect of this stuff and all this stuff. So there's so many deja vu moments in my life, right? And I'm not trying to brag. I'm not trying to boast. I'm a very confident individual, but I'm also an isolationist. I
have the best deja vus. Everybody knows. Okay.
My deja vus are
My deja
great.
vus are amazing. They happen all the time, and nobody's had more deja vus than me. Okay. All right.
Right. So, but think about that, right? I mean, that guy could literally be a split personality of me. I swear, man. I mean, at one point in time when I was creating music, and this is 2001, right? I named myself Improv, M-P-R-O-V, multiple personalities reciting over outlandish verses is what it stood for. Not over outlandish, but multiple personalities reciting outlandish verses. And one of the songs that I made with my friend Josh, shout out Josh, reached out and contacted me after like 15 years the other day. So
you're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, my bad. So my buddy Josh reached out to me, and shout out to him is all I was saying there. But one of the we created a subgroup called New Hoven Poets, and I was improv in that group, and it was real guitars, real drums, and et cetera, et cetera. I spit out this one verse that, by the end of it, I mean, we're talking 64 bars in double time, just and it was just going and going and going, right? By the time I ended up getting it all out, every time, because I record my voice a certain way, I would damn near collapse, right? Because I was just so out of breath. But I was so determined to do it that, I got it done. And I'm saying all this because the things you think you can't do, right, we're told by everybody around us, just put your mind to it. You can achieve anything. Well, why? How? Is it sheer force of will? Or is the program bending to you because you're focused so much on it that it has no other means of calculating anything else for you, right? This is a power situation and the computing processing and the memories and all that jazz, if we go off of computers being what we know and understand them. Well, ladies and gentlemen, quantum computing is something that I guarantee only the people that are working on them kind of understand, and they're guessing at a large portion of it, if not just doing mathematical equations to follow it through to its end, and don't have a fucking clue of what's going on. So that being said, we're already in the next step of computing. So what we understand is just a way for us to process the stuff out, and for us to not be in a simulation is just so it's mind-boggling to me that we're not, right? Now, whether or not the whole entire simulation is for me, by me, when I open my eyes, that is up for debate, right? Because even being in the simulation is up for the debate, to be honest with you. So, but that's because we don't know what the hell is going on. We think we do, but we're a bunch of bonobos running around a rock like ants. Because when you do your zoom out, like you're saying, by the time you're at the atmosphere, we look like little ants.
You can't, by the time you're in orbit of Earth, you can't even see a person anymore. You just see land masses.
But think
and
of
ocean.
the person that has that power. That's their thumb. They could literally put their thumb on the face of the Earth and just destroy it. You know what I'm saying? That's how gargantuan things would have to be, I would think, unless we're a photon. Right, and this is, I'm bringing, all right, sorry. I rattled off right there. So I started a little, I started off with saying, what if we're electricity in this sequence, or in this segment? If we're pure energy as a soul, what if it's an electron? Right? We're a power source at that point in time. We can go anywhere in our constructed universe, right? At a blink of an eye, right? Or at least, I mean, we can go anywhere. Traveling further distances obviously take time because we have a speed limit on the photon itself, but the photon can go through things. It's it's like a Wi-Fi signal, if you will. But
this goes along with. Well, I thought you were done with your thought. I'm sorry.
You're good. I was just going to bring in the movie Tron and that aspect, but go ahead.
Well, what you're talking about, we are essentially a bundle of energy that is in this form right now, but we don't necessarily have to be in this form, is, again, from a little segment of Plato. Socrates is describing the afterlife, basically. And they're talking about how, souls would go into this purgatory type situation after anything dies, whether it be a bug or a bird or a cat or an elephant or a person or whatever, right? Fish.
Okay.
Their essence goes into this purgatory pool of souls, and depending on their previous life, how it went, whether they were, a just, honorable thing, or, ruthless and hateful and shitty, would determine your place in line to pick out a new life. Right. Okay. So, again, Socrates is arguing for...
It's a reincarnation.
Right, reincarnation. But Socrates, again, is arguing for the benefits of living a philosophical life, right? He's saying the philosopher is the pinnacle of life, right? This is his point. He's describing, all of these different souls getting in line, picking out their new life. And he said the wisest and, the philosophical soul is going to pick out like the simplest, calmest, most laid back, right, life of all time, right? You're just going to sit back and relax. You might even be a bug. It's like, I don't want any problems and blah, blah, blah. But that was his vision of basically reincarnation. And again, that kind of leads us into why he was put on trial, is these types of ideas that he was putting in people's brains that are completely...
Back in the time when Zeus and,
Zeus,
Athena,
Apollo,
and
Athena,
the god.
Right. Reincarnation wasn't really a thing in their bibliography of gods, okay? Their religion.
Right. I'm just
So-
making sure other people know the time frame. That's why I'm saying
Oh,
those
yeah.
names, just so they
Ancient
get everybody
Greece.
on context.
If you don't know who the hell Socrates is, what are you, 2? Come on. Get it. Get a grip.
The simulation's going through some stutters right now, bro.
Get a grip on reality, man. But so you reminded me of that, and you know, talking about, you know, if we're just bundles of energy. There was a Chinese. I don't know if it was a poem or a book. I didn't look that far into it. But chapter 2 of Shaanxi, the butterfly dream. Zhuang Zhao, a Chinese guy, I don't know, he dreams he's a butterfly. When he wakes up, he's not really sure if he just was a person dreaming that he was a butterfly just now, or if he's really a butterfly and now he's dreaming that he's a person, you know? So perception equals reality. And one of these, he wasn't sure which was real.
I mean, schizophrenics are a good example of potential glitches in the matrix, if you will, right? I mean, these people see things that just aren't there to us. I mean, we have a full-blown movie for, what's his name? Shoot, I forgot the name of the movie off the top of my head, and it just popped into my head. A Beautiful Mind is the name of the movie, if I recall correctly, where, you know, the mathematician goes through and he sees, you know, a little girl, an older man, a CIA agent, and, you know, a middle-aged guy, his best friend that goes through college with. Russell Crowe plays the actor, and I just forget the actual person who he's playing. But that being said, full-on schizophrenic, but an absolute genius at the exact same time, right? A person who, in the movie, says, I know that they're delusions. Obviously, it took some time for him to come to that realization, but he created an equilibrium with the potential of seeing a whole different dimension, if you will, right? I mean, we know there's 5 dimensions. We can see a 4th dimensional shadow. We can recreate them all day long in computing, right? But the 5th dimension we know exists. We can't create the shadows because we're not in the 4th dimension in order to be able to see the 5th dimension shadow, right? If I'm not mistaken, we can computationally create them though, or, you know, see them on a computer, but we see them as 2D slices at that point, which are, you know,
3D
we have really no.
yeah.
Well, no, I think we actually see the 2D slices of anything above the 4th, because we can't, you know, we're looking at a 2D slice in a 3D model of a 4th dimension in 3D models, right? So anything after that, I think, is just a 2D. But that being said, think of all those layers that we just talked about. And if we're energy, what's to say that when we do close our eyes and we have the deja vu dream or whatever, that we're not up in that a higher realm of reality, or traversing through, you know, say, I don't know, call it a wormhole, if you will. You know, as you go to sleep and you pass off to sleep, I have a specific method that I do in order to fall asleep quickly, but I essentially see a bright light that slowly engulfs me until, you know, it becomes black again, if you will, by the time I go through it. And then when I wake up, it's white light again and I see the world around me. So, but that's not to say that we're not moving through different mediums, if you will, of space and time or whatnot, the reincarnation layer of things. You know, I believe if you do good, the next time you ran through the program, you'll have a better thing. Or better yet, let me say it this way. The reason we're here currently, this is my opinion, is we're here to learn a lesson this time around, right? We're the flashbacks and the deja vus, if they're not part of a different realm, they are a remembrance of, okay, we took this step last time, let's deviate and go to the next step, or move you off into a slightly altered course, right? And in the simulation of things, that's the next iteration, if you will, of you going through the simulation. So that way, if there's multiples running, you can now have that, the multiple outcomes predicted in the end. If it's just a single, then obviously this is a remembrance and you're altered and going down a new course, and we're following through and remembering this current course. Like me physically here right now, I'm on a specific course. Everything I see in a deja vu nudges me slightly left or right. I'm not on the exact course then, but I'm still accepting and learning the lesson for this new trajectory, if you will. And then anytime another deja vu occurs in life, it's a nudge left or right to not take the previous step, if you will.
Well,
hopefully that made a little bit of sense.
Right before we go to break, you are right in line. I mean, parallel with Socrates' vision of the afterlife and that reincarnation.
And that's crazy because
exact. I'm talking
I've
exact.
only ever looked. Well, I've only ever listened and looked at his stuff through the web.
We'll be back.
Smooth Brain Radio will be right back after these messages from our sponsors. And you'd hear something right now if we had any. Welcome back to Smooth Brain Radio, ironing out your brain one wrinkle at a time.
And so, if I'm right in line with him, like I said before that, I've really not read anything
Perfectly in line. I'm telling
Plato's
you
or Socrates.
exact. What you just said
So,
right before it is identical.
well, that to me then that only reinforces the simulation. You understand that, right?
Well, so when I was researching this, I looked up, obviously, simulation theory, okay? And I found a scientificamerican.com article, and a lot of, all of my notes are going to be from there, basically, the links that I found on this net, except for the allegory of the cave and a couple other things. But within there, I found a guy in 2003 wrote a scientific article called "Are We Living in a Computer Simulation?" His name was Nick Bostrom. Very famous article.
The name sounds familiar.
It literally kick-started this whole debate back then, right? And people started taking it serious. Familiar. So, but from that article, to get a better handle on Bostrom's simulation argument, another scientist named Kipping, last name Kipping, decided to resort to Bayesian reasoning. So Bayes' theorem, named after Thomas Bayes. Bayesian analysis allows one to calculate the odds of something happening called the posterior possibility by first making assumptions about the thing being analyzed, assigning it a prior probability. So you have a prior probability of, okay, I'm thinking about this. How probable is it that that could be true? And then if that is true, what's the posterior probability that X, Y, or Z assumption can be made from that? So Kipping, he collapsed the propositions 1 and 2 into a single statement. This is Bostrom's 3 trilemmas, okay, that he came up with in his article.
Okay.
He put 1 and 2 into a single statement and separated them into 2 statements, because in both cases of Bostrom's paper, the final outcome is that there are no simulations. So it puts a physical hypothesis that there are no simulations. That's the prior probability.
Okay.
Against the simulation hypothesis, which is the posterior probability that there is a base reality and that there are simulations within that. So Kipping says you can just assign a prior probability to each of these models. We just assume the principle of indifference, which is the default assumption when you don't have any data or leanings either way. So you're indifferent to it. You don't know. It's a 50-50 is what he's saying.
Okay.
So each hypothesis gets a 50-50 shot. So the next stage, you start thinking about Paris realities, which are realities that can generate other realities within them on their own, okay? And nulliparous realities, which are realities that cannot create simulated offspring realities. So, this is a long read. I'm sorry.
No. You're fine. I'm trying to follow for sure. Okay. I'm just letting you know I'm trying to follow.
I got you. Yeah, this is like above my pay grade as well. So don't worry.
Okay.
So if the physical hypothesis was true, then the probability that we're living in a nulliparous universe, which is one that cannot generate offspring, simulate offspring,
correct,
would be easy to calculate.
Singular simulation.
Right. So it would be 100% that we're in a nulliparous universe that can't simulate offspring. He then showed that even in the simulation hypothesis, most of the simulated realities would be nulliparous. That's because as simulations spawn more simulations, the computing resources available to each subsequent generation dwindles to the point where the vast majority of realities will be those who do not have the computing power necessary to simulate a new generation
right.
That are capable of hosting conscious beings. So as you keep generating new and new and new and new, you lose computing power, and you eventually get to the point where you can't make a new one.
Right. Correct.
However, this is your way in. Okay.
Okay.
These probabilities would change dramatically if humans created a simulation with conscious beings inside of it, because such an event would change the chances that we previously assigned to the physical hypothesis. You can just exclude that hypothesis right off the bat. Then you're only left with simulation hypothesis. The day we invent that technology, it flips the odds from a little better than 50-50 that we are real to almost certainly that we are not real, according to the calculation. It'd be a very strange celebration of our genius that day, he says. So the instant, so the instant that we are able, if ever, to create conscious beings within a simulation inside of our own universe, inside of our own reality, that would ultimately, according to this guy Kipping, say that we are a simulation ourselves, 100%.
Okay. That's so from my way in here is the amount of information that is kept from us, right? And I say us because you and I live in the United States. We know that our government keeps secrets, right?
They lie.
And I'm going to bring an MH370 flight. Pure and simple states that we have some tech that is just way above and advanced, right? We know that quantum computing exists. We can play on quantum computers. People are using them without realizing that they are using them. Okay? IBM's quantum computer, Google's DeepMind, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's DeepMind. Could be Q-Wave is what I think it actually is. But that being said,
I think they renamed it.
They're now... Yeah, I think it's Q-Wave is what it's called now.
Yeah.
Well, I know that the AI itself is called Bard that is running on it, if I'm not mistaken. I could be incorrect on that. Don't quote me. But what I'm trying to get at here is the technologies we know about are super advanced, right? We don't understand them. What about the technologies that we don't know about that are leaps and bounds beyond what they're telling us?
There was a guy. This was
Pause. Sorry. I have a total dropped out. My audio engine totally stopped over here.
oh
I know, we'll
God.
just keep going on yours. Yeah, sorry. I've had an issue on my end, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for that hassle, but that's the simulation at work.
Man. All right. So there. I'm going to pretend you didn't say that. Okay. So there was a guy. This was many moons ago. I heard this talk, and I haven't been able to find it since, which is kind of disturbing to me. But it was this guy who claimed he was, he was in the military. He had credentials. There was no question that he was in the military. He claimed to have worked in a lot of black projects, right? And in a nutshell, what he was saying was, if you have ever imagined something, if you can imagine it, if you can conceive of it, even if you think there's no way that it's actually possible at any point in time in the future that this would be some kind of technology that we would have access to, they've tried it. And they were either successful or not, but they've tried it. Okay? Right. So absolutely, there are technologies that exist in the world and on our planet that we simply don't have access to, that do exist, that are being used. There's no question about that. I mean, whether you question the validity of this person that I'm referencing statements, and I don't remember his name, so my apologies. I don't have a reference for that one. But whether you say, well, this guy is just a crackpot, he's wanting some his 15 minutes of fame or what have you, it just makes sense to me that we know that dark money goes into these programs, these black ops programs all the time. They tried to do time travel back in the 60s. They tried to do teleportation in the 70s. They tried to do, we know this was going on. They've tried this stuff. Whether they were successful or not, we don't know.
Manhattan Project is a pure-on success, if you ask me. That led to MH Flight 370. Things that rhyme are usually a clear instance of it's a rinse and repeat scenario or cycle. So
we're going down the rabbit hole here, boy.
Point, though. I mean, you could remove the governments from the equation and all that jazz. Why? The reason I say you could remove them is whoever's programmed the simulation is trying to keep, I don't know, let's say this particular simulation we're in is how far can the Earth go on just running oil, right? No matter what, always make the equation be that they're always fighting for this resource that is renewable and comes out of the ground and recycles itself. But let's make them think that it's a rare resource and run the simulation until let's see what happens to the world that just runs on oil, if you will. Right? I mean, I'm bringing that up just because of the climate and all that jazz that's in our current ecosystems and around the world. There's a lot of fear mongering about that. So, and I know we're probably hitting the end. My timer's done messed up, so it's on you to tell me if we're there.
We're about 57 and a half.
Oh, all right. So good minute left. It's fantastic. All right, then. Because I'm the host of the topic, I'll close it out. And obviously, if you want to chime in the last little bit here, the whole purpose of this conversation, pure and simple,
I must be heard.
To let the brains of people that wouldn't think about it, just maybe even think about it. Because if you can let even in an ounce of this is a simulation, you'll expand your thinking process, pure and simple. Because you'll either grow. I'm not going to say that. Let me just ixnay all that. It's a simulation. You're going to do what you want to.
Well, how are you going to do what you want to if it's a simulation?
Or are you?
Are the thoughts that I've had this whole program that I'm expressing to you and all these lovely people that are listening right now, these beautiful, lovely, perfect individuals. Okay? Are they even my thoughts, or have I been programmed to have these thoughts the whole freaking time? And And that's why I'm the way that I am, and I'm programmed this way, and there's no getting out of it. And God damn it, I can't think any other way, and I'm just stuck here.
Well, from my point of view, I opened my eyes and created everything for me by me subconsciously. So you're just a crazy multiple personality reciting outlandish verses.
No. I'm the man in the box, buried in my shit. Yeah. My conclusion is going to be very simple. I don't think it's a simulation that we are in. And the reason I don't think so is, well, it's complicated. But looking at all the evidence either way, I think it's just not there yet where I can say I'm on board with this. Okay. And it's a little bit scary, to think about this is all just a weird simulation and nothing is happening. But we're at the end of the show, folks. And that's it.
Tune in next time.
Bye-bye.
See if we can reboot the system.
Join us next time for more Smooth Brain Radio. And don't forget, keep that one brain cell healthy until then.